You can order the front wheel hub and wheel bearing used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Turn your engine off and set the parking brake. We recommend loosening the nut at the end of the transmission once the vehicle is on the ground. If your vehicle is equipped with aluminum rims, you will need to remove the wheel first before you can remove the central rim cover. Use a breaker bar and a 32mm socket to unblock the nut on the end of the transmission. Loosen the stud bolts on the front wheels. In order to change the front wheel hub and wheel bearing on your vehicle, you will need to take off the wheels to have full access. Lift the front of your vehicle. We strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Honda Accord safely before carrying out this step. Place the vehicle on the jack stands. Don't forget to put the wheels under the vehicle. In order to change the wheel hub and wheel hub bearing on your vehicle, you need to remove the wheel knuckle assembly. Turn the brake disc inward to make this operation easier. You can now see the ABS sensor. Using a ratchet, an extender, and a 10mm socket, unscrew the ABS sensor's retaining bolt. It's common for the components being removed to be seized up, so don't hesitate to brush them and use penetrating oil to make removal easier. Using a 17mm wrench, pull out the sensor by jiggling it back and forth to try to loosen it. Unfortunately, on this vehicle, the sensor is very often seized up and impossible to remove. If you are in the same situation, you will therefore need to remove the wheel knuckle with the sensor to pull it out of its slot. Using a small ratchet and a 10mm socket, unscrew the bolt holding the plastic bracket of the ABS sensor harness to the wheel knuckle. Using a ratchet and a 10mm socket, unscrew the nut holding the ABS sensor harness bracket to the upper control arm. Then remove the bracket. Insert a small flathead screwdriver into the locking tabs of the plastic bracket and push them towards the center in order to disengage the bracket from the body. Hey, it's Alex from CarParts.com. If you enjoy this video and want to support us, like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, back to work. From the engine compartment, insert a long flathead screwdriver on one side and a fork on the other to access the ABS sensor connectors. To do this, pull on the tab and then on the connector. Once disconnected, you can remove the engine compartment connectors from the wheel arch. Finish unscrewing the nut on the end of the transmission. Using a ratchet and a 10mm socket, unscrew the two bolts holding the brake hose to the wheel knuckle. Using a Phillips screwdriver, loosen the two screws holding the disc. It is now necessary to remove the caliper assembly. Turn the disc inwards. This will facilitate the following steps. Using a socket wrench and a 17mm socket, unscrew the two holding bolts on the caliper mount. Tip: attach a piece of electrical cable or a hook to one of the strut spring coils. Remove the caliper assembly and hang it on the hook. Then remove the disc. It is now time to remove the outer tie rod from the knuckle. Remove the cotter pin from the castellated nut of the outer tie rod with a screwdriver and pliers. Using a wire brush, brush the castellated nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Using a 17mm wrench, unscrew the outer tie rod holding nut. If you do not have a ball joint puller, a tool specifically designed for this task, take a hammer and hit the knuckle. The ball joint should come out of the knuckle. You must then disengage the upper control arm ball joint from the wheel knuckle. Remove the cotter pin from the castellated nut of the ball joint with a screwdriver and pliers. Brush the upper control arm ball joint retainer nut and spray it with penetrating oil. Release the ball joint with a ratchet and a 14mm socket. Finish unscrewing by hand. If you do not have a ball joint puller, a tool specifically designed for this task, take a hammer and hit the knuckle. The ball joint should come out of the knuckle. Brush the nut of the lower ball joint and spray it with penetrating oil. Loosen the lower ball joint using a ratchet and a 17mm socket and remove the nut. Then, with a hammer, hit the part of the control arm where the lower ball joint is inserted to loosen the assembly. You can now disengage the lower ball joint from the control arm. Tilt the wheel knuckle to remove the CV axle. And remove the wheel knuckle. Secure the wheel knuckle in a vise. To remove the wheel hub and wheel hub bearing, you need to pull out the ABS sensor. To do so, we recommend watching the video, How to Replace the Front ABS Sensor Honda Accord. Next, using a flathead screwdriver and a fork, remove the wheel bearing metal shield. Be careful not to damage it, as it is not supplied in the kit. You now need to press the wheel hub using a hydraulic press in order to extract it from the wheel bearing. Take a bearing dismantling cup and press the wheel hub outwards. Once the wheel hub is disengaged from the bearing, secure the wheel knuckle in the vise once again, in the opposite direction. In most cases, when you press the wheel hub, part of the bearing remains attached to the wheel hub. It is therefore necessary after pressing the wheel hub to replace the wheel bearing. Brush and spray the bearing with penetrating oil on the retaining ring. Using circlip pliers, remove the bearing retaining ring. You can use the screwdriver. Take a bearing dismantle cup and press the wheel bearing outwards. Secure the wheel knuckle in a vise. Once the wheel bearing has been removed, thoroughly clean the bearing housing in the wheel knuckle using sandpaper and brake cleaner. Clean the groove of the retaining clip with a flathead screwdriver. We recommend taking the opportunity to change the brake backing plate, which can only be removed by taking out the wheel hub. Using a Phillips screwdriver, unscrew the 3 bolts holding the brake backing plate and remove it. Brush the contact surface of the brake backing plate with the wheel knuckle. Then reinstall the new brake backing plate. Then screw the 3 bolts back on. Apply assembly grease to facilitate the installation of the new bearing. Position the old bearing on the press to position the wheel knuckle completely flat on it for pressing the new bearing. Next, place the wheel knuckle on the press. You can order the wheel bearing used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. Take the new bearing. If you want to know which parts and tools we use in this video, just check the description and you'll find everything you need. The black magnetized part of the bearing must be positioned opposite the press. Next, press the assembly until the new bearing comes to a stop, or you have the space you need to position the retaining clip. Put the wheel knuckle back in the vise. Then reinsert the retaining clip. Apply assembly grease to the inside of the bearing. You can order the wheel hub used in the video on CarParts.com through the link in the description. Place the wheel hub on the press. You can position it on a socket so as not to rest on the threading. Place the wheel knuckle on the press. Take a socket so that you can press the central ring of the wheel bearing onto the wheel hub until it stops. The preparation of the new part is now complete. Put the metal shield back in place by correctly positioning the ABS sensor opening. Install it using a small mallet. Take the new sensor. Insert the sensor into its housing. Then, screw the retaining bolt back on using the ratchet. Grease the part of the lower control arm that will be in contact with the lower ball joint. Now you can put the wheel knuckle back in place. Start by installing the CV axle in the hub. Replace the lower ball joint in the control arm. Next, screw back on the nut until it's tight. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. For great content, our best price, and fast shipping, download the CarParts.com app now. Then apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the upper control arm ball joint sleeve. Do not grease the inside of the cone. Reinsert the ball joint. Then screw the castle nut back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Take the cotter pin and fit it into the castle nut. Use a screwdriver to bend the cotter pin around the castle nut. Apply silicone grease to the flat part that will be in contact with the sleeve of the outer tie rod. Do not grease the inside of the cone. Put the outer tie rod back in place in the knuckle. Put the castellated nut supplied with the new part in place and tighten it using a 17mm wrench. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Take the cotter pin and fit it into the castle nut. You can now bend the cotter pin. Put the new brake disc in place. Tighten the two fixing screws as far as possible by hand. You can now reinstall the caliper assembly and screw it back on. Finish tightening using a torque wrench. Don't forget to remove the hook that you used to hold the caliper assembly together. Screw the brake hose mounting bracket back on. Roughly put the hub nut back in place. Screw the bolt holding the plastic bracket of the ABS sensor harness to the wheel knuckle back on. Route the ABS sensor harness through the opening in the body. Put the metal bracket of the ABS sensor harness back onto the upper control arm, then screw it back on. Next, clip the plastic bracket back onto the opening. From the engine compartment, reconnect the ABS sensor. Then you will be able to put the wheels back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheels in place. Finish tightening the hub nut once the vehicle is on the ground using a torque wrench. Depending on the type of wheel on your car, you may need to lift your vehicle again. And to remove the wheel in order to crimp the nut on the end of the transmission using a pin punch and a hammer. Then you will be able to put the wheel back on your vehicle. Put your vehicle back on the ground before properly fixing the wheel in place. Operation complete.